Welcome back to Birds of a Feather Talk Together. This week's episode is a little different because we aren't talking about a bird. Instead, we are talking about cicadas. In Illinois right now, there are two different broods of cicadas, the 13-year cicada and the 17-year cicada, both occurring at the same time. This hasn't happened at the same time in over 200 years. Maureen Turcatel joins us to discuss the cicada phenomenon. She is the collections manager of insects at the Field Museum. We discuss how the cicadas are impacting birds, the rare blue-eyed cicada, and also talk about the fungus that is making cicadas hypersexual. Like I said, this is a little different than our usual episodes, but we thought you'd enjoy this, and Maureen is super cool, so you're in for a treat. Okay, time to grab your binoculars, maybe some earplugs, and let's get into it. Okay, well, welcome back to Birds of a Feather Talk Together. This is RJ, and I'm with John, Shannon, and Amanda, and we have a guest to talk cicadas with us this week. Maureen is joining us. Maureen, do you want to say hi to everyone and kind of give us a little info about yourself?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. So my name is Maureen Turcatel, and I am the collections manager of insects at the Field Museum. So my job is to play with bugs all day. And I am not a cicada expert. I research horseflies, but since this is the bug of the moment, I ended up learning a lot about them, and I'm happy to be here and share.
Every 13 to 17 years, you can bone up on cicadas.
So we're all in the Chicago area, so we're very familiar with what's going on right now. But for people that, are in other parts of the world, other parts of the country, do you want to give kind of an overview of what's going on with the cicadas right now?
Yeah, so in some parts of the United States, we do have these periodical cicadas, and they are special because they only come out every either 13 or 17 years. They do have different broods. So I had people saying like, oh, it looks like a couple of years ago I heard about them. Why is it happening again? And that's because we have different broods in different parts of the country that are not synchronized. But this year we are having both the 13-year and the 17-year broods emerging in Illinois. So in Chicago, we only have the 17-year periodical cicada, so there are 3 species of those. And in the southern part of the state, we have the 13-year periodical cicadas. And there is a small area around Champaign, Springfield, where both broods are overlapping. And this overlap, like this convergence, only happens every 221 years, if I'm not mistaken. It's 13 times 12. So the last time that this happens was right after the Louisiana Purchase, and Thomas Jefferson was president.
It's like solar eclipses.
I think it would be way funnier if those two things were at the same time, but we can have everything. Yeah.
I'm okay with not having periodical cicadas like this coming out all the time. That would be fine by me.
Yeah, they are loud. In some places, people are telling me they are reaching pretty much 100 decibels at some point, and I believe them. And that's one of the reasons why I say it would have been very nice to observe if we had the solar eclipse, because they are louder towards the end of the afternoon. So usually at night they go quieter. And I was really wondering, like, would they stop singing if we had the solar eclipse in the middle of the afternoon? But yeah, they do emerge in the early hours of the day. Usually in the morning, we're going to see them near the ground. And then by the end of the afternoon, they'll go up in the trees. And that's when they're going to be really, really singing. And it can get very loud.
We have so many of them up in Highland Park, like the North Shore of Chicago, where Amanda and I live. It is so loud right now, and we just walk outside, and it's like all afternoon, and it's like, I mean, it's hard to have a conversation even, and like when we go birding as well, we like can't hear where birds are coming from. It's just been so incredibly loud, but we're just astounded at just how loud it is. It's like kind of breathtaking.
And we don't have any in our yard, so we don't live that many miles away from you, and our yard is silent. So all I hear is my incessant house wren singing all day, every day, and in the middle of the night too. But we do not have a loud sound of periodical cicadas or any cicadas in our yard.
So I have family in the northern suburbs, but away from the lake, not in this area. And they don't have them either. And why do, like, where John and Shannon are in Evanston and then us in Highland Park, why do they not have them and we do?
I think it can be a combination of factors. So I am near the Field Museum, near the lake. I think we had one colleague found one, and I heard one singing the other day, and I was just like, where is it? I couldn't find it, but they're not here. I think it's a combination of just, the grounds and the trees, they were so disturbed. At some point, they were cut and replanted. Haven't seen any in the museum campus, Grant Park. But also, it can be that the closer you are to the lake, the soil might be too sandy for them. Because that's what we observed when we went to Champaign, because we really wanted to go collecting where both broods were converging. And we visited 3 forest preserves. 2 of them were super full. Like, they had a lot of cicadas, and one, it had the trees, but no cicadas. And I was like, oh, what's going on here? And I was just searching for information. And somewhere I found that it mentioned that the soil was very sandy. So there you go. I heard that there are also not as many in the southern part of the lake, near Indiana Dunes, which we know also it's a sandy soil. So I think it can be a combination of factors, because if the trees are cut, depending at what part of the 17 years that they are underground, the cicadas might end up, not making it. And even if the trees are replanted, then we're not going to have the adults emerging to lay the eggs.
So how do you think this evolved?
Easiest answer is, like, we don't have the definitive answer for that yet. So from what I read, it's just an evolutionary strategy. Somehow they figured out that coming out at such spaced events is very successful against predators. So there are no specialized predators that feed on periodical cicadas, because, how can you wait for a food source that only comes out every 17 years? So
It seems dumb to me, like a really stupid evolutionary scenario. I'm going to wait for 13 years before I put my reproductive output into the world, and the rest of the time I'm just going to sit underground and
feed.
put my babies
Basically.
underground and
But
wait.
if you
This is
think
crazy.
about it, this is a longer span than basically the typical lifespans of any of the birds that are likely to prey on them. And so,
Yeah.
again, this idea that nothing can specialize on them is, I think, absolutely a likely factor in
Yeah.
all this. It's amazing.
So for the annual cicadas, we have the cicada killers that also come out every year, because they know the cicadas are going to be out there. And of course, we have the generalists feeding on periodical cicadas, so raccoons, squirrels, birds, even other insects, but nothing that's specialized on periodical cicadas. It could be because of the way that they feed also. So if I'm not mistaken, they feed, they do feed on sap, but I think they take the sap from the xylem, which, if I remember botany correctly, that's when the sap is
Down.
going
Xylem
up.
xylem
Down?
up, phloem down. That's right.
Xylem up, yes. So it's still, it hasn't gone through photosynthesis yet. So it doesn't have, the sugars. It has the minerals, but, it's not very rich. It's very diluted. So it just might take longer for them to get all the nutrients they need for, going through their metabolism. So who knows? I think it's a combination. It could be, I am not very well versed in geology of North America, but it could be related to some glacial periods. Who knows? That one is something that I heard the other day. Like, I should go and look that up and see if it, there's any evidence of that, but I haven't yet.
How many species of cicadas are there?
Worldwide?
Yeah. Are there thousands?
Yes, I think around 3,800 different species of the family
And
Cicadidae.
people eat them in lots of parts of the world.
Yes, I think that's probably true. People are eating them here. I haven't tried them yet, but I would.
Ooh.
But
Would you
yeah.
really? What would you do
I
to
mean,
them before you ate them?
Deep fry, you can go wrong with that.
RJ, Amanda,
That's
what do you think? Are you eating?
I think deep fried. I think I would.
I'm with Maureen. I would eat one deep fried.
Yeah, that's probably the only way.
Someone, there's one of our neighbors, she was saying her dog has been avoiding eating them. And she said that she had heard that they're like shrimp and your dog's not supposed to eat shrimp. So she's been like, I don't know where she got that, but she was keeping her dog away from them. And then another neighbor's dog had apparently like eaten like a dozen of them, and it caused a lot of stomach upset. So
Yeah.
when it went to the bathroom, it had an accident inside, and there was like full, like partially digested cicada.
Yeah, so I think that there is some general advice for people who are going to try and eat them, that there might be some food allergies because they are arthropods, just like shellfish, just like shrimp. So people with known severe allergies might have some type of reaction. We don't know because that's not something that's commonly, consumed by people, but people should be wary of it and, just be mindful. I'm not sure if that would be a problem for dogs in general, but yes, if they eat too many of them, the exoskeleton is hard to digest. So I'm not surprised that they had some tummy problems. That totally makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, you guys, if you were going to deep fry them and eat them, would you take the eyes out first?
No,
Tiny,
because
no.
I'd put them like in a batter so I wouldn't see the eyes.
Well, I was thinking you'd take
They
off
are
the head.
so creepy.
So I happen to have taken an awful lot of cicadas out of mist nets in the neotropics, and one of the problems with them is, again, they're not going to do anything to you, but you can't get the mist net strings once they're around the head. You can't get them off. The head just pops off. So you could just pop off the head and then fry them up.
Okay. Okay.
So remove the head.
All right.
John's
Then you
in
don't have to
favor
see
of
the
removing
eyes.
the head.
Depending on what you're looking for, especially when we have them at, coming out of the ground, you can get different stages. So some people prefer to cook them right as they crawl out of the ground, still in the nymphal stage. Some people like them just as they emerge when they're still whitish and soft and squishy. Some people don't like that because the texture is weird. Some people prefer them after the exoskeleton is hardened and they had the wing spread because it's more crunchy, but also it's going to be making it harder to digest. So I think we can try a variety of
Yeah,
dishes.
we still haven't gotten
That's
to a
awesome,
variety there
Maureen.
that I'm ready to, or I'm excited about.
I love
Yeah.
that there's a variety. That is
Stick to my
awesome.
tea.
I did.
I heard there was
Cicada tea.
a gelato shop in Chicago that's serving cicada ice cream. I have to, yeah.
That's cool.
And they roast the cicadas. It's not the periodical cicadas though. They bought some cicadas that are approved for human consumption. I don't remember where it's from, and they come dehydrated and they are roasting the cicadas.
Oh, very interesting.
So
That's cool. So, Maureen, what are they doing when they're underground for 17 years? What's going on?
they are feeding. So there was this misconception that they were dormant, and they're not. So they are actively feeding, and they are hemimetabolites, so they don't go through the entire metamorphosis like the classic butterfly example with the larvae and then the cocoon and then the adult. So they have the nymphs, right? And once they have the wings, they're adults. So that's true for all insects. Except just insects that don't have wings. But for winged insects, once they have their wings, they're adults. And when they drop to the ground, so we're gonna we might have some starting to hatch about this time. When they hatch from the egg, they're very tiny, about 1 or 2 millimeters, and they drop to the ground. They bury themselves. They find the roots, attach themselves to the roots, and start feeding. And so they go from 1 or 2 millimeters to the size that we see them crawling out of the ground after 17 years. So they are feeding on sap, and from what I learned, also that's how they know the 17 or 13 years have passed, because they do have an internal molecular clock. And because they are feeding, they can tell by the differences on the sap what's going on the outside, if it's winter, if it's summer, if it's spring. So yeah, they're
That's
feeding and they're
amazing.
counting the years.
The ones we're seeing now, are they dropping, like, how do they give birth? How does that work?
So the females will lay eggs inside the branches of trees. So they have a very strong ovipositor that will pierce the wood and just lay the eggs inside the twigs. They will hatch, and then they basically drop to the ground and bury themselves. So that's basically their only job as adults. They start singing, they mate, the females will lay their eggs, and that's it.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up a thing that's come up with the rehab centers in Chicago associated with birds, and that is that all these species of birds in our area, if they can, will eat cicadas when they're out there, and a lot of them are feeding them to their young, and apparently there's still work to be done on this, but they think that a lot of the fledglings of birds like grackles and blue jays are coming into the rehab centers with eye incrustations, kind of, and respiratory problems. And what they think's going on is that the cicadas are actually very low in vitamin A, which is something that apparently birds are usually getting from phytophagous insects, so insects that are eating plants. And because the adults aren't eating any plants while they're up above ground, what they're getting is a lot of nutrients. So there's some evidence that birds benefit a lot from this, but at the same time, it looks like they're not getting everything they need, in spite of the fact that there's a lot of food there.
Oh, wow.
That's interesting because it looks like the adults also feed. Maybe not as much as the immatures, and maybe this, I'm not sure how much, but there were some studies on stomach contents because they wanted to see what kind of plants they were feeding on, and they found different plants, which would be harder for an immature of cicada to do because they're underground. But the adults are actually feeding, but perhaps somehow they don't get the vitamin
I don't know.
A
I mean, this,
that they need.
Well, it could be that the birds are differentially susceptible to a lack of vitamin A, whether they can have stores of vitamin A in their bodies as adults or juveniles. So there could be variation. When I was looking at that, I found the scientific process they used really fascinating because when they first started seeing this a few years ago, there was a concern that it was a new disease. So they advised people to take their feeders down, and there was a lot of worries. They started testing birds, and they tested and tested and tested and tested and could find nothing new, like no new parasites, no new viruses, not like West Nile that came through in the late 90s. And so then they just started looking at these birds and realizing that they had classic signs of a vitamin A deficiency in their eyes, and so they tested the birds, and that was indeed what happened. Is the birds have low vitamin A that knownly causes these issues, and it happens to baby birds because they don't have year or 2 years of experience having eaten things that have vitamin A, so they don't have any stores. So they get sick almost immediately when they're fed that. So birds can certainly have more babies and lay more eggs and stuff like that when they have such an abundant food source at these times of year. But their babies are susceptible to vitamin deficiencies.
and this was back in 2021, and as Shannon's saying, they couldn't figure anything out except that they realized that there was a big cicada outbreak in the areas where it was a big hatch year for in Washington, D.C. in that area, which is one of the primary places where this was happening.
Yeah, that's interesting. I heard that some places they had recorded an uptick in bird population and some other animals too related to the cicadas emergence, but I didn't realize that could,
So I was realizing I was reading about another hypothesis that's out there, which is that with the cicada outbreaks, the birds tend to feed on the cicadas because they're all over the place. And then they're not eating the typical phytophagous insects that are hitting a lot of the trees. So the trees get more herbivory. And you just start realizing how all this stuff is connected up in these ways that every 13 to 17 years become a really interesting aspect of what's going on out there.
Do other things feed on them too?
Cicadas?
Yeah. So bats are feeding on them, or other mammals?
I mean, they'll be hanging out in the trees. They're not going to be flying. So I don't know if the bats usually go for something that's moving or just there. But I am sure that raccoons, squirrels, possums.
We've seen a lot of squirrels eat them, and we've seen them, they eat it like a corn on the cob, where they hold with their little hands, like the head in one side and the other, and they like rotate it. It was, we've seen it happen like a dozen times where we look and there's another squirrel holding one, chomping
please
down
tell
on
me you
one.
have a video.
Not yet.
I
We'll
don't,
have
but
to
I
try
did
to get
see,
one.
there was a video on like the WGN News of a squirrel that was eating one like that, and then the squirrel realized it was being recorded and looked at the person and then threw the cicada away like it was embarrassed.
It was embarrassing.
It was really cute.
Yes.
I don't think squirrels are cute. even eating cicadas like corn on the cob.
So, Maureen, I don't know very much about insects at all. How do like a male and female cicada mate? Is it like she lays the eggs and then goes away and then he fertilizes the eggs, or do they copulate or?
No, so they copulate prior to laying the eggs. Yeah,
Okay.
so usually you see cicadas like they have their abdomens here, so they're like butt to butt. And that's how they are copulating. And then the female will lay the eggs.
Oh, that's awesome. We've
And,
definitely seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why the males sing. And so only the males make noise. Only the males only the males sing. And each species has a specific song. And the females know how to find the mate according to the song.
Oh.
And that's basically them advertising, I'm here, come to me. So they will mate, and then I'm not sure how long after the female is going to start laying eggs.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Is there a difference, like when you're collecting them, like down in Champaign, where there's overlap, like between the 13-year and the 17-year, like that you can tell visually, or how do you know which is from which brood?
We were hoping that we were going to be able to tell, and it's much trickier than we thought. There are some morphological differences, but we couldn't really tell by the naked eye. And for some of them, it's just going to say, oh, you know which species is which by geographical distribution or by the song. But then if you have a female, they're not singing. Or if you have a million cicadas singing at the same time, it's also hard to identify. But we collected them anyway. We have a bunch, and we are preserving them either frozen or in alcohol. We're going to have some pinned. So hopefully we can do some CO1 barcoding. So that's DNA. And that might be helpful. Or if we have any cicadas experts that happen to visit our collection, we're going to ask for their insight. And we also had some people collecting in the areas that we know it's only the 13-year-old cicadas, and they're going to bring us specimens. So we can use them as reference to and try to figure out the morphological differences between the 13 and the 17. So it's 3 species for the 17-year-old cicadas and 4 different species for the 13.
Oh, interesting.
Genetic differentiation is there across population. And
It is
because
a
they
great
don't
question.
move, right?
Not much. They don't move that much. Probably that's what gave origin to the broods, to the different broods. But I am not sure. I'll have to look for some papers on that.
Because you would think there's got to be, even locally, significant amounts of genetic variation that must develop. Because if they're not moving very far from where they come out of the ground to where the females lay eggs and they fall back into the ground, then,
Yeah.
or maybe there's a lot of extinction too.
Yeah, but I think it makes sense because one good example is the blue-eyed cicada, right? We know that it happens. We have no idea why. And this year we were telling people, hey, if you find them, bring us the specimens because we don't have that many. We would like to have some. At some point, we have to tell people, okay, we have enough because people, it is rare. It's 1 in a million. But when you have a billion cicadas and everybody has a smartphone and a camera, we were overwhelmed. So we're very thankful for the people who contact us, but now we have more than enough. And we noticed that some areas are more likely to have the blue-eyed cicadas. So we had people saying, oh, yeah, I found one, and then I found another the other day. Someone found two the same day. And some places people are just like, I'm outside all day looking, and I've never seen, I couldn't find one. There are millions of them, and I didn't see a blue-eyed cicada. So I think it's very possible. And this is all in Chicagoland.
So, Maureen, where are the blue-eyeds being found?
I think it was West Wheaton, mostly.
Wheaton, okay.
Yeah.
We've been
Yeah.
looking for them in the North Shore and have not seen any, and I totally want to see one.
So how many cicadas do you think you've looked at, Amanda?
Oh gosh. So I don't RJ, do you think we've seen a million?
I was just
Maybe.
I was just
they're
loving this when they said
everywhere.
it was 1 in a million. I was like, wait a minute. So some kid is out there looking at a million cicadas? I guess that maybe.
I feel like we've seen a million cicadas. We are like infested with them. And then we went to the Botanic Garden today and they are just crawling up everything. It's really something. Yeah. And it's kind of funny because we were bird watching and you see them flying through the air and it distracts you because they usually don't see bugs or notice bugs flying through the air, and it's like a little tiny bird. And there's so many of them. There's so many.
So, Maureen, you don't know how the blue eyes come to be. We don't.
Not yet. We don't know that yet. And now we do have some specimens. We realized that we might have had some in the pin collection because once you preserve them dry, once you pin them, the eyes go black. So it's almost impossible
Same in
to
birds,
tell.
right? The soft
Yeah.
part colors change.
But if we preserve them in alcohol, the eyes keep like a whitish gray. So it's very different than the ones that are red-eyed. And the ones that we collected alive that we knew were blue-eyed, we were able to preserve some in liquid nitrogen.
Oh wow.
So that's my best bet. Like it's going to be a very nice resource to try to figure this out. Who knows?
Yeah.
Do we know why they're red?
Um,
Are there pigments, or is that
I would have to check, and that's something that I'll probably have to look into the literature once we start looking, trying to figure out why the eyes go blue. So I'm not sure if it's
birds can go blue for lots of different reasons. It's all the structure of the feather, the structure that's inside the feather. But you can turn yourself blue by getting rid of other colors. So if you're green and someone takes away your yellow, your feather's going to be blue, for example. So I wonder if it's an addition, a subtraction, or
to be honest, the eyes aren't true blue. They are more of a gray. It kind of, I think the blue is more of a
I
poetic.
got to admit, I was a
so
little underwhelmed.
It's the red goes away.
Oh, wait. So John, you saw the blue.
I saw one of the
Did you
ones
just
that
see
they
it at the?
collected, or one of the ones that I think somebody brought
Maureen
in
has?
to,
Okay.
to the insect collection at the Field Museum, and I was like, that's kind of gray.
Okay.
Yeah, but did you see it alive?
No, I did not. So that's
Oh.
Yeah. So it's when it's alive. I mean, the way that the light reflects it might give a little hint of blue, but it's more of a gray. I'll say it's more of a gray. And so I don't know. It's possible that just the red or the orange, the bright orange, goes away, and it kind of looks blue-ish for some people, but it's not. I don't think it's blue pigment, and I don't think it's structural blue that would just like a morpho or some bird that like really.
So it's just the absence of whatever makes them red.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
so. Do you think it happens in males and females?
Yeah, so we got males, females with grayish blue eyes, and different species too.
Oh, neat.
And I've seen some pictures on social media of some cicadas with blue eye and the red eye.
Oh no,
We don't have
Oh,
one of those in
You
cryo
need
yet.
those.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Someone
So
needs
who
to
knows?
give you those.
They could even be. I wish people would take picture of their abdomen because they could even be gynandromorphs. Who knows?
Oh, I was to say, how do you tell whether one's male or female? Can you tell from the outside?
Yes, you have to flip them over. So the abdomen is going to be very different. So the females are going to have a pointier abdomen and ovipositor, and the males they have a more blunt abdomen. And if you look near the wing, like on the abdomen, you see the thymble, which is the organ that makes noise.
Oh, okay,
Oh.
very cool.
Yeah, so it's
that
not
we
like
were-
crickets, right? They don't rub their legs together to make sounds the way crickets
no.
do.
So the thymble is I don't know how to describe the structure, but they basically vibrate the structure, and their abdomen is pretty much hollow, and it acts as a resonating chamber.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That do they have? Someone told me they don't have mouths. Is that true?
They do.
Okay.
Mouth parts. It's not actually a mouth, but it kind of looks like a straw, basically. So they are able to pierce branches or roots or whatever they're feeding on to get to the sap and drink it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's going on with like the fungus? I've seen like, is that a real thing? Is there
It is.
a fungus? Okay.
Yeah. So that's Mesospora cicadina. At this point, we don't know very much about it yet. But yes, it is infecting cicadas. We found a lot of them in the field. They are around Chicago. We don't know at which point the cicadas are exposed to it. If it's something that they are already, hatching from the eggs with the fungus and the spores are there for 17 years, or if somehow they are exposed to the fungus after they emerge. But the ones that are infected, their behaviors change. They become hyperactive and hypersexual. They will try to mate with anything, male, female. And basically that's how the fungus is spread from one individual to another. And they will just keep mating. Sometimes parts of the abdomen fall off, and you can see the plug because the abdomen is pretty much hollow, right? Especially for the male. So the fungus creates like a whitish plug, and they just keep going. It's weird.
What happens to a bird that eats that fungus? Because does it like a hallucinogen or something for these?
It
I think
looks
we'd know
like
that if it was.
it's in a very low concentration for humans. So, but there is some byproducts, I think, amphetamines and psilocybin. I am not sure if it has the same effects in insects as it has in mammals. But I think I'm not sure if the quantity would be enough to, hurt or do anything for, well, some birds are pretty small. So short answer is I don't know.
Is this a new thing, or did this happen with the last, the brood 13 years ago or 17 years ago?
I am not sure how long they've noted this, but it's recent enough that we still don't know much about it.
Okay.
But I don't remember when the first reports of this fungus happened.
When I was in Washington, D.C. a long time ago at a National Science Foundation meeting, and I was taking the train to the NSF place where the meeting was, and they were absolutely and utterly everywhere, like falling from the sky, landing on me, landing on my luggage, landing in my work bag. I have never seen anything or experienced anything like that. So it's not surprising at all that people would think there could be something bad in them, or that they're sick, because look what they do. They just go up and they fall from the sky on you. People were shoveling them with snow shovels to get them off of the train tracks and away from the sidewalks. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, we've had some people asking if they are the same as locusts. because of, and
Yeah,
if
for
they,
sure.
that's something that we get asked a lot, if they are a pest. But not really, not in that sense. I don't think they're going to be like as destructive as locusts, but I see how people can do this correlation.
It's a good thing they don't have human pests or human diseases because there's so many of them.
Yeah. Once they emerge from the ground, what's their lifespan like? Yeah, once they emerge from the ground.
Um, I think about 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh, okay.
If if a bird or any other predator don't get to them first. So yeah, it's not very long. So a lot of people ask me, okay, what can I do to get rid of them? You don't have to do anything. They're just gonna die in a couple of weeks.
Just wait. Okay. And then is there the whole point of their life is just to make it up to the top of a tree and lay their eggs?
Yeah, just like any adult insects, that's what they do. Basically, mating and reproducing, getting their eggs. Yeah, basically that's what adults do. That's the stage that's basically for reproducing and continuing the species.
So, Maureen, we've talked mostly about cicadas, but you're the collection manager of all insects at the Field Museum, is that right?
Yes,
So, what
I
other?
love to brag. It's the largest collection at the Field Museum.
We'd love to hear a little bit more about that. Some of the other insects. Yeah, if you anything you want to touch on that has been exciting this year that's been going on.
Yeah. So when I say it's the largest collection, it's in number of specimens. So we estimate that we have about 13 million. And that is a low estimate, to be honest. I don't think we'll ever know for sure how many specimens we have. But that's more or less what we have estimated. So for the bean collection, 5 million specimens. In alcohol, about 8 million. We have a lot of bulk samples, which are just with how they're called, bulk samples. They're jars that come from traps, and they can have hundreds or thousands of bugs. And in our collection, they count as one. And the strongest, the most represented taxon in our collection is Coleoptera, the beetles. So we have a very strong rove beetle collection, Staphylinids. And yeah, we have a lot of visitors and researchers, students that come and visit our collection or request material to study the specimens that are deposited there. This year, it's been mostly about the cicadas. So we are adding to our collection. We are collecting. We had some people, a lot of the press coming and wanting to see them and wanting to take pictures. We found some really cool stuff that we had no idea were there. Well, yeah, it's a very rich collection, and whenever I have the chance, I try to show people some flies because horseflies are a tough sell.
How did you? Dead ones are an easier sell than live ones. So.
Yeah. No, there are some that, they look very cool, and there's a lot of diversity. There are 4,500 different species of horseflies, and that's usually what I tell people. Like, I try to make sense of why so many, how they're related to each other, how are they so successful, because they're pretty much everywhere. So, yeah.
How did you get interested in them?
So when I started college, I had no idea I was going to end up in entomology. I thought I was going to work with genetics until I took classes and realized it was basically statistics. So when I started the classes in invertebrate zoology, I really loved, especially the lab part, in which you basically look at stuff and draw them up. And a professor just said, well, that's basically what taxonomy is. You look at stuff, you draw them, you describe them, and you find new species. And I thought that was great. So he recommended me to go and talk to some professors in zoology, see if I could get an internship. And I ended up in the entomology department. And I remember the first time I saw the collection, I was just amazed. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I've never been to an entomological collection in my life. And I had no idea what I was going to do, what I was going to work with. So a friend of mine, she gave me the best advice ever. She was my senior, and she said, well, if you don't care, if you don't know what you're going to work with, then choose your mentor. And that was awesome because one of the professors that I really liked happened to work with flies. And then when we were trying to come up with what I was going to do, he said, well, there are a lot of groups that just need some work done. They need people because they're being understudied. And horseflies was one of them. And the only thing, I didn't want to tell him, but the only thing that I was hoping for was something big that I could see with the naked eye. So when he said horsefly, I said, yep, that works.
That works.
And they're really interesting. I mean, there's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of stuff we don't know about horseflies. So yeah, it was, and I started with alpha taxonomy, which is something that I really like to this day. It's hard to find the time because it takes, it's not something that it's fast to get the results. But I think that the coolest thing is when we find new species and get to describe them. That's my favorite thing.
So how many species of horseflies are there in Illinois?
In Illinois, that is a good question. I remember I looked for this number, but now I would say between 50 and 100 maybe. I'm not
That's
sure.
a lot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Wow.
Yeah. Between
Yeah.
horseflies and deerflies, there's a lot of diversity, especially in the southern part of the state. So yeah, you can find a lot of good stuff around here.
So I just heard you mention deer flies. Are horseflies horseflies because they bother horses?
Kind of a misnomer.
Okay.
Because they are not they are generalists. Like they're not going to feed only on horses. So basically it's any large mammal that they can get the blood from, and only the females bite. So the males are going to be feeding on nectar and pollen. But yeah, for them it doesn't really matter if it's a horse or
A human
deer
sleeping
or
in a
human or yeah.
Go right through the
Dogs.
hammock.
I've
Yeah.
definitely been bitten
Yeah.
before. Yeah.
Yeah, some of them are aggressive, and some, if they're especially hungry, they can bite you through your clothes. I've heard stories about some deer flies cutting through jeans pants, but I'm not sure.
That's awful.
But I also wouldn't be surprised.
Do they have some of the strongest mouth parts of insects?
They can be. I don't want to say the strongest in insects because there are some other insects that are there like cutting wood and
Yeah, fair.
yeah, but they basically they're very sharp, and that's why it's so painful because they have those two mandibles and they basically move them side to side, just lash your skin, and then they have some anticoagulants in their saliva and get the blood flowing. So it's not like a mosquito you only notice after you've been bitten and they've gone away, because it's more like a hypodermic needle. And they have anesthetics in their saliva. So horseflies don't have anesthetics, just the anticoagulant. So they're just going to slash your skin open, put some anticoagulants, wait a bit for the blood to flow, and then they come back and lap it from the skin. Yeah.
I've always thought it's the most painful thing to get bit by a horsefly, but now after hearing that description, it's now that I can put a visual to it, it's even worse than I remember.
That is awful.
Yeah, no, it's very painful. There are some videos of some brave people who actually endure that to get the action of how they open the slash on your skin, and they say it was hard to keep my hand not moving while that was being
Yet
filmed.
another thing I wouldn't sign up for.
No. You're crazy. I'm not doing that on purpose.
Yeah, and there's no venom it's just the way that they cut it that hurts. Can you imagine if they even had some venom like hornets? I don't know.
Wow. That's awful.
Well, this has been awesome, Maureen. Thank you for joining us. Is there anything else we want to touch on? Anything else insect related?
So we always get asked what our favorite species is.
Oh no! Don't make me answer that. I don't.
No, I have
never
to
know
make
what to
you.
answer.
It's painful to be asked that question and answer. So we're going to torture you with that.
Oh.
I keep thinking John's going to change the error of his ways and come up with a different North American species that he likes best because his is lame. But so, what's your
I'll
favorite?
tell you what. I change my answer every time because I can't pick one. So it depends on what we were talking about. I really like rubber flies, like how they look like acylids. And I always show some in the collection that they look just like wasps. People are like, no, there's no way that's not a bumblebee or a wasp. No, that's a fly. And they are predators. They're very good flyers. They catch other insects in flight. They do have some venom in their salivary glands, but they don't bite us. So it's safe to observe them. And I think they're really cool. Like they just perch on vegetation and wait for the insects to start flying, and then they just go and grab them and feed on them. So I think they're very cool.
They're like peregrine falcons, only a little smaller.
Yeah. Pretty much. But if you ask me the same question tomorrow, I'm gonna have another answer because there's I mean, it's not even fair. Look at the diversity of bugs. It's impossible to pick one.
Is there a specimen you always show people when they come into the museum?
Yes. There are two. Actually, there's one that I prefer because of the name of the species. But we do have two tiny beetles that were collected by Darwin in our collection. That's always a crowd pleaser. And usually, I go my regular spiel like, oh, this is a scientific collection, so every specimen has a lot of tiny labels with a lot of information, where they were collected, when they were collected, by whom they were collected. So take a look. It's very tiny. Tell me the name of this collector. And they, see Darwin.
Wow.
Collected this in Chile. Jeez. So it's usually a hit. We also have a specimen of the largest fly in the world. It's a Midas fly. And people usually are freaked out because it looks very dangerous, but it just feeds on plants. It's completely vegan and harmless to humans. But they look really cool. They're about...
How big is it?
3 inches.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. I think it's...
That is a big fly.
That's enormous.
Yeah, about 3 inches. Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah.
I'd be afraid of that too.
Oh, it's harmless. They'll just be looking out for, basically some fallen logs, like decaying wood. That's what they feed
That would
on.
not be my initial reaction to a fly that was 3 inches big, is that I don't have to worry that they're only going to find a dead log on the forest floor. I would run screaming from that.
Well, I can't blame you because there are some big wasps about the same size that will hurt you. So, and my partner makes fun of me all the time because I am a baby when I see wasps in the field. They hate me. They attack me all the time. It's painful. So when I see them, I run.
Yeah.
You study horseflies and you run from wasps.
Yes. And sometimes it's only me. Like it happened when we were in the Amazon. There were 6 of us, I think, and we walked past a nest of very aggressive wasps. That's just like, they don't care. If you walk past and they don't like you, they will come after you. And guess who was the only person who got stung several times in the head?
Oh, no.
No, Maureen, that's terrible.
It was.
Jeez Louise.
That's why I run.
Yeah. That is crazy. Man. Oh, my gosh.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been great.
Thank you. My
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah, we really,
It was really cool
really
to be here with you
appreciate it.
today.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had so many. I was so excited to talk to you because we've like had so many questions, and I feel like so much better now.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
and if you have any
so
other
much.
questions,
But are you
feel free to
hungry?
reach out. Send me an email.
Thank you. Am I hungry? I want to try the ice cream Maureen was talking about.
I want
think
you to
that
go to
sounds
the
like the best.
bakery in
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 Highwood.
Highwood that was selling baked goods in the shape of cicadas. I'm not eating a real cicada, but that chocolate cake thing, I'm all for.
You're right. That does sound good. Oh man.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining us. We appreciate the support. A special shout out to everyone that has rated us on our podcast app. We asked for your help and you showed up, so thank you everyone for your help. If you have a question for us, please reach out to podcast.birdsofafeather@gmail.com. All right, everyone, have a great week. We love you. Thanks.